every magnesium will be beneficial to the body because we need so much. 80% of known metabolic functions need magnesium. Our signaling molecules, our receptor sites open up when magnesium comes along. You need vitamin C. What's vitamin C doing? It's your major antioxidant. What's the antidote to vitamin C? Sugar. Sugar and vitamin C look almost the same in their chemical structure. So they are both competing for transport on insulin. What I recommend is you take your body weight in pounds and divide that in half. And that half is the number of ounces of water to drink a day. So 110 pounds, so that's 55 ounces. And in each quart, put a quarter teaspoon of a good sea salt.
I just wanted to start this episode with a message of thanks. Thank you to everyone that chooses to listen to this podcast. By doing this, you're enabling me to reach more people so that they might learn how to unchain the pain to live a healthier, happier life. The feedback that I get from those that take action and are inspired by the show's content is incredibly rewarding. So I'd like to ask you a teeny tiny favour. You are truly able to change the course of this podcast, the types of guests I have on this show, and everything that I do by doing one simple thing. And that is simply hitting the subscribing button. The guests on this podcast are incredible because so many of you have hit that button. When I think of what I want to do this year on this show, this is fueled by the amount of you that subscribe, that tune in, and that comment on the show's content. So please keep subscribing, keep commenting. Any type of comment, please keep them coming. And keep sharing the shows that you find inspiring. I can't wait to see what this year brings for this show, for you, for my community, and for this platform. Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Carolyn Dean. Welcome to the show, Carolyn.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Ruth.
I'm so excited we're here because I am so passionate about the importance of supplements and looking at alternative approaches to how we can support our health and well-being. And I know this is a journey that you have been on for many years, as the often known as the doctor of the future. So I'm really excited to talk about all of your experience and your learnings, and particularly in the topic of magnesium. But before we start, let's introduce Carolyn. So she is a medical doctor and naturopath. She's author of over 35 books, including the bestseller, The Magnesium Miracle, Total Body Reset for Women's Health, and Total Body Reset for Men's Health. And she's got those in front of us for those that are watching. And she's also launched the RNA Reset, which is a program, and brought 40 years of experience into a proprietary, unique formulations to give every individual at any stage of wellness or illness the necessary building blocks for sustained health, vitality, and well-being. And like I said, I'm so passionate about this area because it's a topic of conversation that's not talked about enough, I think, in the medical sector. So I'm really excited for the wisdom and knowledge that you bring. What are you passionate about in life right now?
Oh my goodness. I support an organic farm here in Maui. So that's a big passion. As you say, I have formulas. I have an online dietary supplement company. I make sure that I help educate the public on all manner, head to toe. I mean, we're going to be focused on brain health, but head to toe. But years ago, when we used to hear that food is your medicine, I don't think that's true anymore because we're so stressed. We have so many toxins in our environment. We do have to take supplements. But what food is, it's a hedge against you getting sicker, because the ultra-processed food, the food dyes and additives, and all the chemicals in our food supply have deteriorated our health. And the food itself, even though my farm is organic and biodynamic, the soil, it gets depleted of the minerals that you need for your health. And being a big expert on magnesium, I know there's not enough magnesium in the soil to make a difference to the body's need for 80% of our known metabolic functions need magnesium. How are we going to get that amount of magnesium? And here, let me just blow your mind right at the beginning, Ruth. When I was writing my last book, what is it? Guideline to Mental Health, Complete Guideline to Mental Health, something like that. I can't remember. I found that for every brain neuron, of which we have 86 billion, every brain neuron has 2 million mitochondria.
Wow.
2 million mitochondria. Now, for people who listen to your show, we know how important mitochondria are. They are the place where energy is made. They hold the Krebs cycle and the glycolysis cycle. And to make energy, you need magnesium. You also need B vitamins, copper, and zinc, but you need a lot of magnesium. So if you have 2 million mitochondria in 86 billion neurons, you need so much magnesium, and we're not getting it. Now, to compare, the heart, which I used to think was the place where we had the most need for magnesium and the most magnesium, because my introduction to magnesium therapy was because I had heart palpitations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Heart cells only have 5,000 mitochondria to make all the energy that the heart needs for beating, however many millions of times a day. 5,000, the brain, 2 million.
Wow.
So I'm saying right now, in each neuron. So I'm saying that perhaps dementia and Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, perhaps all these neurodegenerative diseases, and just the brain fog and the fatigue and the apathy, anxiety, depression, is that partly, mostly magnesium deficiency. So that's where I'm at right now.
No, and I think that's super fair, because I think, as we focus more onto cellular health, which is one of the areas I'm super passionate about, is people don't tend to look at what is necessary to optimize our cellular health and optimize our mitochondrial health. And when and that's at the heart of every single cell in our body. And like you said, within the brain, one neuron contains 2 million mitochondria. So which explains why it's a massive energy hungry entity, right? Because 20% of the energy that we need is used by our brain, which totally explains everything. And then it, the fact that mitochondria need magnesium, and we don't get enough in our diet for various reasons, particularly because our food system is so depleted and the soils are so depleted, totally speaks to the need to look at how we supplement differently and look at what the most important aspects are of supplementation by dialing in at a cellular level. So I'd love to know, where did your journey really start? I know you mentioned it, you started with heart palpitations, but where did that start for you with your heart health? What did you discover or not find out through the normal route when you were first looking at your health?
Well, I was in New York, right in Manhattan, doing AIDS and chronic fatigue research
Mhm.
back in the early 90s. And it was so stressful. I developed early menopause. I was in my
Wow.
mid 40s back then in the 90s. And I just started, getting skipped heartbeats and whatnot. And it
Mhm.
got worse and worse. Right around that time, Random House, a publishing company, asked me to write a book on magnesium. And I thought, I mean, I knew about it from my naturopathic training, nothing in medical school. But then,
Mhm.
how can I write a 300-page book on one mineral? But when I started researching it, I realized that I was so magnesium deficient. I have calcified ear bones that cause some deafness. I had headaches. I had
Mhm.
tension and heart palpitations and leg cramps, Charlie horse,
Wow.
head to foot. There are dozens of magnesium deficiency symptoms that are
Mhm.
actually misdiagnosed as diseases and treated with drugs.
Or
So
PCOS is another classic, and there's many ways it gets misdiagnosed.
absolutely. Anxiety, depression,
Yeah.
all of that. So as soon as the book, the first edition was 300 pages. The
Mhm.
third edition is up to 600 pages.
Wow.
So that's why I shortened and I know the title is backwards. I shortened the book for the latest. It just came out, Magnesium, the Missing Link to Total Health. So
Uh-huh.
that's like a summary of everything.
Yeah.
And what I started doing after I published the first book was looking for a mineral company that would make a non-laxative magnesium, because come to find out, when I started to take extra magnesium more than was in my multiple, I got an immediate laxative effect.
Mhm.
So that set me on a path to find a non-laxative magnesium, which I did. But
Mhm.
none of the mineral companies were interested in working with me on this. So I had to create my own company. Necessity is the mother of invention. So what I realized through my journey is that there must be millions of people who, when they want to take magnesium for all their head to toe magnesium deficiency symptoms, it gets curtailed in the bathroom. And
Mhm.
who's going to take a supplement that gives you the laxative effect?
Mhm.
So I realized that a lot of people, they'll take enough magnesium to do some things, and then the rest of their magnesium deficiency symptoms, they'll patch and band-aid with other supplements or drugs. So my mission is to have more recognition for a non-laxative magnesium, which I do have, which I've done university studies with, but it's pretty hard to get traction in the medical world
Mhm.
about natural supplements. I mean, we went through that during the COVID years, where all the supplement companies in America were kind of shut down a bit if we said anything about dietary supplements helping people. You're not
Mhm.
allowed to say that. So that's why we love shows like yours, where we can talk about the natural remedies that
Mhm.
people could be using, so that we don't end up on medical insurance and welfare and all the rest of the things that try to prop up the drug companies, because people just get sicker and sicker.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because, you know, we have our own internal doctor, like we like to say, from a redox perspective, and it's activating our internal doctor and knowing that we can heal ourselves.
Yeah.
Is so important. But in order to heal ourselves, our bodies need the right nutrients, they need the right inputs to be able to work effectively. And it's finding the right inputs, whether that's nutrients, drugs, or whatever it happens to be, to allow our body to do the work. I mean, there's no drug actually heals you, by the way.
Mhm.
You heal you. Like we sort of say, oh, I'll go and get an intervention and it will heal me. No, you do the healing yourself.
Mhm.
But there's the supplements or the drugs that support and facilitate, but they don't heal. It's us that does the healing. And I think we forget that we actually have the power to do it ourselves if we get the right appropriate advice, which is what's so important. And I'd love to dive into getting the appropriate advice, because there's so many different types of magnesium, and often supplement companies use the standard, as it were, which is magnesium oxide. So I wondered if you could talk us through all the different types, because it's like a minefield. There's like 7 or 9, I can't remember how many, but I'm sure you know. Different types of magnesium, and they all do slightly different things. And some of them are good and some of them are laxatives. So would you mind just trying to educate the layperson on what magnesium is, how it works, and what the different types are and what they should look for?
Yes. Let's start with what magnesium is. So it's a mineral. It acts as an electrolyte to keep the heart beating nicely. And it's quite crazy when you look here in the US at an electrolyte panel, magnesium isn't even on the list. We've got calcium, potassium, sodium, no magnesium. So this is what keeps magnesium out of the doctor's mind. The first magnesium that was used in research studies was magnesium oxide, because some very brilliant owner of a magnesium oxide company, she gave samples, large samples, to all the magnesium researchers. So they did their studies on magnesium oxide, and come to find out, every magnesium will be beneficial to the body because we need so much. 80% of known metabolic functions need magnesium. Our signaling molecules, our receptor sites open up when magnesium comes along. It helps the muscles work and the nerves work. So every one of your 640 muscles can be, tight and irritated, or your 46 miles of nerves, they can all be tingling and painful if you don't have enough magnesium. Because how magnesium works, you've got your cell, and magnesium will open up the cell mineral ion channel to allow calcium to enter, and then it closes off. Calcium does its little activity, and then the channel opens up and calcium comes out. If you don't have magnesium to do that function, calcium flows into the cells and causes irritation and firing to the point of cell death. That's where you get your spasms and tightness. So they are in a balance. But what we've done in our world is we've overcompensated with too much calcium. Women got told, when you're over 45, 50, you have to take a lot of calcium for your bones. But they don't tell women to take magnesium, and they're needed in balance. So what happened with the calcium just dosing, Dr. Boland in New Zealand, he did over half a dozen studies and showed that women who simply take calcium supplements are at a higher risk for heart disease, gallstones, kidney stones, and heel spurs, and ductal breast precancers, DCIS, from calcification.
Too much calcium.
Yeah, just calcium precipitating. And it gets this DCIS gets misdiagnosed as cancer and causes a lot of trauma in women. So calcium, we've been over-calcified. Calcification is one of the ways that we're aging. We tighten up and get rigid. I have a friend over here. He was a rodeo rider when he was young, and he's in his 70s now. And I started talking to him on my beach walk because he was walking all bent over. And I just couldn't I usually never intervene with people, but one day I handed him my book. And the next day he stopped and talked to me, and he said, "I can't believe I've been taking calcium all my life because I was told in the rodeo network to keep my bones strong, I needed calcium. So he's just the perfect example of too much calcium. So anyway, with the magnesium oxide, it's only 4% absorbed and the rest of it is a laxative.
Yeah.
Even so, all those early studies showed benefits. There are huge books written about the effects of magnesium oxide. And then magnesium citrate, that's another one that's very common. It's kind of a laxative, but not as much as oxide. You get a glycinate that's less laxative, and it goes on like that. But here's what I'm going to say that's so revolutionary about magnesium. In your cells, which is what we're trying to support with the right nutrients, in your cells, you need to have the magnesium as an ion, not as a compound. If you've got magnesium deficiency symptoms, you're not deficient in the oxide or the citrate or the taurate or the lactate. You're deficient in the magnesium. So all these marketing, the text for marketing goes on and on and on about, well, the glycinated does this and the taurate does this. You want the magnesium ion. So what my chemist did is he created a stabilized ion of magnesium from magnesium chloride, so that when you pass a laser through my liquid magnesium, and I'm not going to say the name of my products, FDA won't let me. And anyway, you put a laser through this liquid and it doesn't bump up against any substance, because magnesium, that proves the magnesium is submicroscopic. It's the size of an ion. That's why I call my minerals picometer sized. So all these compounds that say, oh, there's so much going on, this magnesium does that. No, the magnesium always does the same thing, but they're trying to hype up the compound, the other side of the magnesium. And then you'll get the deliberate mismarketing where you've got this magnesium L-threonate that says, oh, it's the only one that gets into the brain. But they did a rat study and found when they stuck a needle into the cerebrospinal fluid of the poor rat, that the magnesium threonate had 7% more magnesium in the cerebrospinal fluid compared with, I think it was magnesium citrate. So 7% difference. They did $1 million marketing scheme that makes everybody think it's the brain magnesium. Whereas it's the ion of any of these magnesiums can get into the brain. So a compound, it has to disassociate into the two parts of the compound. Dissociation is how it's called ionization or dissociation, but it happens so quickly and it lasts just an infinitesimal second. In that infinitesimal second, that ion will jump into a cell and do some good. And again, because magnesium is so desperately needed by our bodies, the body will feel it. I mean, most people say, as soon as I take some magnesium, I'll feel better. But what I'm saying, if you can get a stabilized ion of magnesium, you can help symptoms you don't even know you have.
Amazing. And I think that's so important to understand, is that how the ion or the electrolyte, shall we say, is packaged makes a difference to how accessible it is to your body. So the more you can unpack it before you put it in your system, the easier it is for your system to deal with it.
Yeah.
Same with anything, with sodium or anything, I guess, from an electrolyte perspective. If you can take an electrolyte as an electrolyte and not as a wrapper with oxide or citrate or glycinate or anything else, then you're going to get it into your body much faster, which I think is so important. So just in terms of the traditional supplements and what you've talked about, which is the ionized magnesium, what makes it so different in terms of performance from an uptake perspective?
Well, it's fully absorbed at the cellular level as soon as it hits the bloodstream or in the mouth or on the skin. It's a complete absorption. And the difference, Ruth, would be in my example, if I took more than 50 milligrams of magnesium, I'd get the laxative effect from a magnesium compound. And with my liquid stabilized ion of magnesium, I was taking 1,200 milligrams and did not have a laxative effect. So there was my proof when I was in the early stages of creating this compound that my cells were just taking it in and all my symptoms started disappearing. And it wasn't until about a year and a half when I knew seriously, I'm 76 and I feel better now than I did in my 30s because I'm saturated with the mineral that I was depleted on for my whole life. So at about a year and a half, I started getting a bit of laxative effect. So, I guess I'm saturated finally.
So go on, carry on.
So I cut back and now I only take about 300 to 450 milligrams a day.
Amazing. And obviously when you get saturated, if you reach your magnesium peak, as it were, is there any harmful effect if you take too much, or does your body just get rid of it? If you've got, like, for example, B12, your body just purges it, doesn't it, if you've taken too much?
Right. It's magnesium is the safest nutrient because it has what I call the fail-safe of the laxative effect. So and that probably comes to a question, how do you know you're magnesium deficient? Is there a blood test? How much do you take? Well, I say everybody does need some magnesium. We used to get 500 milligrams in our daily diet about 100 years ago, and now we're lucky to get 200 milligrams.
Wow.
So we're so low, and the RDA is like 350 to 400. Yet they've got the RDA of calcium 1,200, 1,500. Now
that's really high.
UK, they're a little more sensible. They only say 600 or 700 milligrams. And that's what I stick with. I say 600 milligrams of calcium, but you can get a lot of it from your diet if you're eating dairy, leafy greens, nuts and seeds, fish with bones. You can get a lot of calcium. Every once in a while, when I indulge in yogurt and I eat a quart of yogurt over 2 or 3 days, I start to get a little jumpy heart and a little leg cramp because the calcium is pushing away my magnesium.
Amazing. That's super interesting to hear.
Yeah. So I say 600 milligrams of both probably is a good idea. But with magnesium, I can say, yes, you could find it in chocolate and nuts and seeds, green leafy vegetables, but not that much. Not as much as you need and not as much as calcium. And calcium, some people have said to me, oh my gosh, I looked at my orange juice and it's fortified with calcium. So calcium just became such a buzzword that when osteoporosis and all that began being diagnosed, and what happened there, I think that whole industry was promoted by the DEXA scan. The little photon, you do an X-ray and see your bone density, but that whole business is comparing like my 70-year-old bones with a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
There's going to be a difference. So that is their model, the comparison, the standard is a 30-year-old bone. And what happens with age, there's going to be some shift and change. And unfortunately, we don't encourage older women we're talking about women mostly with osteoporosis. About a quarter of the osteoporosis are men, however. But
Wow.
with women, we don't encourage the exercise. The older I get, the more I exercise. I'm walking 2 miles a day, swimming a half hour, doing stretches, and I want to do more, because what we do is we build up our muscles, and we keep our muscles toned and keep our bones in place, and we take enough magnesium for the soft tissue structure of the bones. If we get into taking things like over here it's Fosamax, it's a bisglycinates, bisphosphonates, sorry.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. They kill the cells in the bone called osteoclasts.
Okay.
Osteoclasts make bone cells. Osteoclasts break down bone cells. And the drug company thought, well, we'll make a bisphosphonate and it'll kill the osteoclasts, and then we'll just have bones building up. And what they didn't realize, I mean, I call them clowns. I have a radio show, and I have a habit of calling a lot of doctors and big pharma clowns, because they're just not thinking. The osteoclasts not only break down bone, but they remodel bone, or they model bone into the right lattice work that's strong. And what we find with bone drugs is it may look on a straight x-ray that the bone is more dense, but it's actually very disorganized and very brittle. It's gotten to the point where dentists won't work on the jawbone of people if they're on these bone drugs, because the bone is so deteriorated. It's exactly the opposite of what they say they're doing. So anyway, that's a big sidebar.
No, I think it's an important one, though, because we have issues with companies, including governments, introducing, and there's a court case going on in the States at the moment, introducing fluoride into water, which has a huge impact on bone health and brain health, thinking it's actually going to help, and actually it's causing a tremendous amount of damage. People think it's going to help strengthen the bone. Does absolutely nothing of the sort. And then you've got, when you mentioned people being advised to take calcium, is people also are forgetting the importance of vitamin D and the other nutrients as part of the calcium cycle.
Okay, let me jump in about fluoride, Ruth. You'll like
this. No, you do. Please do.
The fluoride for dental cavities, that little bitty study was apparently on young boys in a town where they had high fluoride in the water. And they found that this age group of boys had fewer dental cavities. And they thought, oh, we've hit pay dirt here. Let's just tell everyone to take fluoride. It's in most of the toothpaste. Doctors actually do fluoride treatments. And then along the way, Big Pharma decided, oh my gosh, fluoride is so powerful. It can be bound to our drugs, our medications, to help break through the fatty membrane of the cells. It helps with absorption. Fluoride does. And if you look at the chemical structure of most of the common drugs now, they all have fluoride.
Oh my God.
And when I hope someone back there said, well, what if the fluoride breaks down from the drug and it gets into the body as the poison it is? And they, oh, no. We put these drugs in a petri dish and they don't break down. Heaven forbid. When you put them in your body, the intestinal microbiome, the bacteria, maybe the yeast as well, the bacteria break down chemicals in our intestines. So they're breaking down these drugs. They're releasing the fluoride. What does fluoride do preferentially? It attaches to magnesium.
Yeah.
And it attaches and makes a compound called cellate, MgF2, magnesium fluoride, cellate. And that deposits in tendons and joints and muscles. And what's the side effect of a lot of these drugs that no one's even paying attention to is tendon rupture. The black box warning on a common antibiotic over here is ciprofloxacin, called Cipro. The black box warning, tendon rupture. How many times have I talked to athletes who say, oh yeah, I was feeling sick, my doctor gave me Cipro, I kept working out, and I ruptured my Achilles tendon.
Wow.
So that's what's happening with fluoride. There's the circumstance that after surgery, they have to be very careful with people because there's a lot of heart palpitations. They used to put people on beta blockers just to prevent the heart palpitations, but then they found that it was causing fatalities. What happens with a couple of the inhaled anesthetics is they have fluoride molecules. One of them, desflurane, has 6 fluoride molecules. You are being saturated with fluoride when you're under anesthetic, and you even in the surgical suite, you're developing heart palpitations, and then you get told, oh, you probably have AFib, we have to put you on these 4 or 5 different drugs.
Which also probably contain fluoride.
Yeah.
To make the situation worse.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's just a minefield, isn't it? For people out there. And, you know, fortunate that you are wholly familiar with this topic and the challenges that people have in the context of calcium channels and potassium channels, our iron channels in our cells, and the importance of getting the right balance of ions to allow those channels to work effectively. Right. But we don't realize how much they are being attacked by the drugs companies, that are very companies that are supposed to be helping us and actually end up hurting us over the long term. It would be super interesting, and I don't know if studies have ever been done to understand the health consequences of people taking multiple drugs that contain fluoride or a whole host of other junk that the drugs companies put in your drugs to you know, pad them out. And see what the impact of that is.
It'll never be done because they're just so focused on studying one thing at a time. My whole thesis is, and I'm doing a survey research study on this, is what happens when a certain number of people have been on the same formulas for a certain amount of time. Are my customers getting less cancer, lung disease, arthritis, flus and colds, herpes infections, you know, mouth ulcers, head to foot? That's the only way to study natural medicine, is the whole perspective. But all the nutritional research is just on one vitamin at a time. And I'm just saying, Ruth, what do you need? You need vitamin C. What's vitamin C doing? It's your major antioxidant. What's the antidote to vitamin C? Sugar. Sugar and vitamin C look almost the same in their chemical structure. So they are both competing for transport on insulin. So when you have a lot of sugar, a lot of insulin, and the sugar takes up all the places and transports the sugar to the cells get all this sugar, and there's no vitamin C being transported. All that activity in the cell that causes some waste products, we don't have the vitamin C as an antioxidant there to deal with the waste products. So we need our vitamin C. It's not just something you take for colds and flus. And in fact, Linus Pauling, when he was doing his vitamin C research, he was working on heart disease. And they just kind of demoted him to, oh, he just treats colds and flus. But high dose vitamin C, along with the amino acids, lysine and proline, can reverse heart disease. that's what he was proving. I'm working on a formula for that right now because people they don't realize the importance of vitamin C, and it could be just the ascorbic acid part. I work with ascorbic acid and a food-based vitamin C as well for, all the bioflavins and all the wonderful things. So there's vitamin C, there's omega-3 fatty acids.
Omega-3, so important.
Our cell membranes are being made of, horrible omega-6 vegetable oils, the canola, which is genetically engineered, safflower, sunflower, soy oil. They're forming our cell membranes now because we take so much of that in. You even look at an organic snack, it's going to have safflower and sunflower. It's never going to have almond oil or olive oil. So we've got faulty cell membranes. We could probably call them leaky cell membranes instead of the omega-3s. Now, I work with an omega-3 algae because I don't want to deplete the krill. Krill is a big precursor for fish, omega-3 fish oils. But all the fish oils are contaminated. They're so contaminated, every body of water, when people put a dipstick in it and a measure for chemicals and drugs, and all our water is contaminated. So fish are contaminated, fish liver is contaminated. So what do they have to do? Because these fish livers don't pass the regulations when they are looking for heavy metals and all. They have to ship fish to some, I don't know if it's Norway or Finland, some refinery to get rid of all the contaminants of the fish oil before they put it into capsules. So when I heard that, I thought, well, what are they leaving behind? Because they're using chemicals to get rid of chemicals. So we've got vitamin C, omega-3, vitamin D. Do you know that you have to have magnesium to activate vitamin D? And the reason why a lot of the vitamin D studies are so inaccurate is because they don't know the magnesium levels of the people that they're testing. And with vitamin D, you have to have vitamin K2 to help direct your calcium to the bones and teeth. And then
B12, omega-3.
The B vitamin, seriously important for methylation. I mean, look how we went so crazy on the MTHFR business, with people getting their personal genetics tested. So MTHFR, apparently it's in 40% of people. So I said, well, why do a special B vitamin? I'm just going to make a B that has MTHFR and food-based and low potency. If you see a high potency vitamin D, it's synthetic. And the receptors of the body are meant for a natural substance, whatever it may be. If you put a synthetic in, it has a different rotational spin, as I understand it. There's levo and dextro, they're rotating in a different way. So if you're going into a receptor site, and it's not really lock and key, but that's how we sort of imagine it. I mean, it can go in this way, or it's supposed to go in this way, so this one is not going to work. So
the thumb that's pointing out, once it's locked itself in, doesn't bind with the other thing because it's not the right shape.
Right. A lot of mess going on. So after I worked with my magnesium, I said I have to have multiple mineral in the picometer stabilized ions. So I chose 12 minerals, got them all lined up. 9 of these minerals, Ruth, are necessary to make thyroid hormone. 9 minerals, not just iodine, selenium. It goes down through molybdenum and boron and copper. It's so beautiful to know that your own minerals can make your own hormones, because what happens in the thyroid is it'll just punk out, and either alternative doctor or an allopathic doctor, they're just going to give thyroid replacement, which is never the same as making your own. And then with vitamin A and E, I put them in with my omega-3 algae, just to make a nice fatty sandwich.
And I think that one thing that came up from an Alzheimer's disease, we had Patrick Holford on the show, is the dance that the vitamins play amongst each other. So people often supplement purely with omega-3, but actually omega-3 and B12 work synergistically. So you have to use them both together in order to get the enhanced effect. You can't use them in isolation. So it's understanding how, like you said, for the thyroid, you've got 9 different vitamins that work in order to support thyroid function. It's not just one. It's not just one thing is going to address one function, because it's an interplay between many different chemicals that are either ions or support the ion channels.
Well, you've mentioned ion channels a lot. What's that? You know how they talk about Wi-Fi getting through.
So the blood-brain barrier. So Wi-Fi can influence the blood-brain barrier and impact it negatively, which allows more passage of chemicals or pathogens, shall we say, across the blood-brain barrier that would have otherwise been impermeable, or it would only allow a few things through.
Right. And that beyond or below that is the gateway, a calcium gateway that creates that blood-brain barrier. So what I found, and there is some research on it, if you do have enough magnesium, you stop that calcium gateway from being opened up by the Wi-Fi. So I'm not as afraid of Wi-Fi as I used to be, because I know I'm saturated with magnesium. And there's so many people who are sensitive to just around us. If you think about it, everybody is being permeated. I guess it goes right through us. It goes through windows and walls and everything, the electromagnetic field. So anyway, again, magnesium can be helpful to protect someone against Wi-Fi.
Amazing. I didn't even know that, actually. So that's super insightful. But I know that, when we talk about COVID, that you can be severely impacted by the Wi-Fi signals, become hypersensitive almost to EMF disruption of your blood-brain barrier, because you've been so compromised energetically, because obviously your mitochondria have been basically depleted and not operating effectively. So it totally makes sense. If it's the calcium channels that are impacted, and your magnesium can stop the calcium channels from opening all the time, then you're not going to have so many. You're not going to have so many insults.
And you're bringing up COVID, Ruth. I mean, the COVID years really just knocked everybody flat. You know that people seem much sicker, and whether you got COVID itself or you had the COVID jab, either one has really lowered our immune system, because the spike protein, I mean, it was genetically engineered to have this spike protein. Spike protein is in both, and that seems to be what's in our systems. If we're not creating healthy cells and detoxifying. Detoxifying is interesting. There's a recent online detox summit, and I listened to a bit of it, and I thought, man, they're just making so much of what, do a weekend cleanse, do your bio cleanse, do a liver flush, do this and that, skin brushing. And they're not paying attention to the fact that the body is constantly detoxing at the cellular level.
Every day, every night.
If you don't get your vitamin C into your cells, vitamin C, there's your detox. Magnesium and the other minerals, if they get set up in the different mineral receptor sites,
Mhm.
they keep heavy metals from attaching.
Mhm.
So heavy metals will go to empty mineral receptor sites for
Mhm.
pH. I mean, we know that with strontium. If you don't have enough calcium, uh,
Mhm.
strontium will take its place, to the point where people thought, oh, strontium, that may be good for the bones. And it's not. It's a brittle mineral. What it does
Yeah.
to the body is create brittle bones. So, I mean, we haven't done enough real education on vitamins and minerals. We just identified them and said, in feeding studies, they'd feed people intravenously and remove one vitamin or mineral at a time and see what happened. And they wrote that down and said, okay, we're done. And that
Without looking at the interplay that happens between all of them,
never.
which is what we need. I mean, we've got the computing power today to do that, but we're just so very focused on one intervention at a time, and thinking that one intervention is going to be the panacea to fixing someone's health problem. And actually, you have to look at the whole system,
Right.
and all of the nutrients and minerals and everything else that goes into that system comes out in order to produce an appropriate action plan. I'd love to know, why is magnesium such a common deficiency especially in women? Why do we have this huge deficiency, and maybe how does it change over our lifetime? How does that change from a cellular function perspective?
Well, I've already said we don't get it in our food anymore. It's not in the soil. I can't eat entirely off the farm. I start getting my magnesium deficiency symptoms. We burn it off when we cook. We burn it off when we have surgeries or stress. All these reasons why we don't have it. But with women, when we have estrogen peaks, around our menstrual cycle or during pregnancy, magnesium can be depleted 15 to 30%.
Wow.
Yes. So what happens in pregnancy if we don't have enough magnesium? Eclampsia, preeclampsia and eclampsia. What's that? It's fluid retention, high blood pressure, and seizures as the fluid builds up in the brain. What's the treatment? Intravenous magnesium. Do doctors ever tell their patients to take a lot of magnesium while they're pregnant? No. Midwives do. They know, but it's like this closely guarded secret. So
it's the same with heart health, isn't it? The final sort of intervention for heart health is intravenous magnesium, but nobody tells you to take it as part of your managing your heart health.
But I mean, I've already alluded to that. It's because they don't even blood test it. They don't even look for it. And they don't look for it because the serum magnesium is sort of the test that they use. And the range of serum magnesium is, gosh, what is I'm going to get it wrong, but like 1.7 to 2.2, really narrow range. And what happens if in our bodies it goes below range? The feedback mechanisms in the body will strip some magnesium out of bones and muscles and make it normal again. So doctors say, well, it always looks normal. And it looks normal because the body's fighting to keep it normal. If you look at a red blood cell magnesium, it's got a wider range, like 4.2 to 6.5.
Yeah.
But about 15 years ago, when I started looking at RBC magnesium, the range was, what is it? The range was more narrow. The range now shows a much lower magnesium on the low end because the population is getting sicker.
Yeah. So they adjust it to make us look like we're...
Yeah. So that's what blood tests are. They're the range of the sick population, even hair mineral analysis. I freaked out a gentleman who's big on magnesium, big on hair testing. And he said, well, mine was all out of whack because my magnesium was so high. So all the ratios were out of their normal range. And I said, well,
Normal isn't normal.
You're basing your tests on sick people. You have no idea what you're
Yeah.
doing. So.
Yeah. It's madness, isn't it? And I guess I would be curious to know as well, given the amount of drugs that women now take as an intervention, you know, with the birth control and things like that.
Yeah.
And going back to the conversation that we had earlier, how are the drugs that women are taking that are stacked full of fluoride impacting our ability to use magnesium that's in our body effectively, because fluoride is displacing our body's ability to utilize it in the right way.
Yeah,
so it would be interesting to know as well, is because we're so, it's a prescribe and a forget policy, isn't it? Often when you look at the traditional medicine approach, they prescribe you something, they forget about you, you go away after 15 minutes, nobody monitors whether the drug is effective, because as far as they're concerned, the prescription is the effect, not actually whether it's helping the person at all by any stretch of the imagination. And then you go back to your doctor to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm feeling sicker than I was. So they just prescribe you another drug to counteract the first one without actually validating whether the first one, I know I'm being very general here, but there is this often this approach, isn't there? And I see it in family members how this has happened, where they just have got a bucket of pills and nobody's actually looked at how are they getting the right nutrients into their body in order for their body to function effectively.
Well, here's what I call the blood pressure spiral. You'll go into the doctor, and then the nurse or the janitor in the hallway takes your blood pressure over your coat, and then you're told, oh, it's been high a couple times, it's time we put you on a blood pressure drug. So they don't even ask, well, have you been under stress and are you dehydrated? None of that. And you put on a diuretic, and the diuretic will drain out magnesium and potassium and sodium, drain everything out. And you go back after a month and you've lost more magnesium. First it was all the stress. Now it's a diuretic. Oh, your blood pressure's even worse. We caught it just in time. So they act like you were just developing this horrible blood pressure, and they put you on 2 more drugs, a calcium channel blocker. And what's a natural calcium channel blocker? Magnesium. And then there's an angiotensin inhibitor, an ACE inhibitor to block the kidney function. So you're on 2 more drugs. You come back after 2 months to check if your liver's being affected by all these drugs. And then you're told, oh my goodness, your cholesterol is elevated. Oh my goodness, your blood sugar's elevated. We caught your diabetes and your high cholesterol just in time. Take these drugs. So they're causing these conditions, and you'll always be on these drugs. When I was in med school in the mid 70s, I was told by my clinician, give a drug for as short a time as possible until the body recovers from whatever. We were never told to give drugs for life, but we have somehow been brainwashed into thinking we have to take these lifelong drugs.
Yeah, with no alternative intervention to optimize your lifestyle or your diet, or eat the right foods and drink the right drinks and everything else in between. I'd be super interested to know 2 things. What is proper hydration? And it's not just about drinking water. So I'm curious to understand that in a little bit more detail. Could you explain that? Because I know, for me personally, when I was younger, I was so rubbish at my hydration levels. And I just, to the point that I gave myself severe problems down below that resulted in surgery. And if I just spent the time listening, honestly ridiculous, listening to my body and drinking enough water and electrolytes, then I wouldn't have been in that situation. So could you just, for those, please don't do what I did. Please listen to Carolyn and learn.
Some children, they're afraid to ask to go to the bathroom, so
Yeah.
they hold in urine, they hold in their stool, and can become severely constipated and develop bladder infections. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I definitely am. Sometimes when I come to the end of a podcast, people will say, well, what's your main advice? And I say hydration. And what I recommend is you take your body weight in pounds and divide that in half. And that half is the number of ounces of water to drink a day. So 110 pounds, so that's 55 ounces. And in each quart, put a quarter teaspoon of a good sea salt.
So this, I love this advice.
Yeah. And a good sea salt, Ruth, means it's got to have some color in it.
Yeah.
If you have a sea salt and they say, pure whatever, sea salt, blah, and it's white, it hasn't got the minerals in it. The one I'm taking now, I think it's a pink Himalayan. And
lovely.
Copper colored ones are dark. So a quarter teaspoon in every quart of water. And you try to drink a liter quart in the early morning, like before.
Can you just for the English people, what's a quart in terms of volume?
A liter?
A liter.
It is.
Okay.
So you try to drink it earlier in the day, because I'm not saying to be drinking a quart of water before bedtime, because you'll be up all night.
Yeah.
But what the minerals would do, I mean, that's just sea salt. And people will tell me just with the sea salt, they feel so much better. Their edema is less.
Yeah.
Because the minerals in the sea salt are going into your cells and pulling water in after them as an osmosis procedure. And people will say, I have less ankle swelling. The more sea salted water I drink, the less ankle swelling I have, because if you're just drinking plain water, it's got nowhere to go but hang out in your ankles and fingers.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, when I got my brain scan recently at the Omen clinics in the States, one of the things that came up was I was taking magnesium as a supplement, but the advice from the Omen clinics was some of the cramps that I was getting was probably because I was salt depleted. And since taking more salts in my water, and I notice it happens because I do quite a bit of exercise and I forget to replenish, is that I can be really deficient in salt and it really affects me. And I think the fact that we have conditioned over the last sort of 20 years that salt is bad, which is a load of nonsense.
I know, Ruth, you hear people say, oh, my doctor told me to not drink more than 2 or 3 glasses of water a day, and don't do any salt, and don't do. So they're squeezing all the liquid out of a person. They're, dehydrated, and the worst thing in the world. It just boggles me that there's so little common sense in medicine these days.
Yeah, and the fact that you need salt irrespective of if you have a heart problem. You still need to take salt. You can't deplete it out of your diet just because you've got a heart condition. You still need to take salt.
Yeah, the adrenal glands, let's just pop this in here. The adrenal glands depend on sodium. If your adrenals are weak, and you could get a lot of nervousness, even heart palpitations, but nervousness and weakness, and then the fainting. If you're lying down and you get up quickly and you feel faint, that's a dehydration and a sodium deficiency. So you really need to follow the water guidelines. Half your body weight in pounds, drink that many ounces every liter, put a quarter teaspoon of sea salt.
Amazing. And then going on to symptoms, I'd love to talk about the symptoms now. What are the typical symptoms or the signs that women or men should pay attention to when, like, it's an indicator that we're depleted in? Let's start with magnesium, and then we can go on to some of the other minerals that we talked about.
Well, it can start from the top of the head. If
Mhm.
you take your knuckles and rub into your scalp hard, if
Yeah.
it feels tight, then that's a muscle tightness. I mean, you could soak in an Epsom salts bath or,
Yeah.
put some, Epsom salts. Um, you
Yeah.
can do a skin treatment. Any muscle in your body can be tight, and it can start
Mhm.
there. And then you can have the tightening of your ar arterial muscle,
Mhm.
vessels here, which can lead to a migraine. A
Okay.
migraine is a magnesium deficiency, and
Mhm.
it just makes me so frustrated when I see the incredibly toxic drugs they give migraine patients. When they've done studies where they'll give intravenous, magnesium to someone in the middle of a migraine, it'll dissipate. So why don't they treat with magnesium? And then you can get, eye twitching. I used to have eyelid twitching.
Oh, yeah, I've had that before, yeah, for magnesium deficiency, yeah.
And, TMJ, people who clenched their teeth. And
Okay.
I used to, before I started treating myself with magnesium, I'd bite my tongue a lot because my my whole jaw was so kind of tight and irritated.
Mhm.
So even biting your tongue can be a magnesium deficiency.
Really?
Some people who, your worst nightmare is telling a patient to take supplements and then they choke on them. But some people, their esophageal muscles are in spasm and they choke a lot. And
Wow.
you'll even have stories. I don't know if I put it in my book, but of people who are kind of choking and spasming, and they
Mhm.
do Heimlich, and it doesn't really help. And they take a drink of magnesium water. If you have a magnesium powder with you, put in water. And these people, it'll relax these muscles. I mean, it's crazy. And then you come down to the heart palpitations.
Mhm.
The heart is one big muscle, and
Mhm.
the heart can go into spasm and create
Mhm.
palpitations and angina and heart attack. A lot
Mhm.
of these young athletes that fall over after a long run or a game, that can be a magnesium deficiency, an electrolyte problem.
Mhm.
And even uh, what is it, GERD, the heartburn and reflux and all that. That can be the diaphragms in a spasm that
Mhm.
sort of traps the top of the stomach and gives a regurgitation. That can be
Ah,
magnesium.
that's
And
super interesting.
into the stomach, there's the IBS where people can have alternating constipation and diarrhea. Now, if you
Mhm.
have constipation, most people say, "Oh, I'll take a magnesium as a laxative." Well, I'm talking about my non-laxative magnesium. What it's going to do is help the muscles with their regular
Mhm.
peristaltic movement to eliminate properly. So we
Mhm.
people with constipation who say, "Oh my gosh, that cleared up," which
Mhm.
is amazing. And with, the diarrhea IBS, that's people who just have a spastic, and
Mhm.
they call it that, a spastic colon. And then in the legs, restless legs, it's just so
Mhm.
horrible for some people. And I
Mhm.
know there can be other reasons. Some people say maybe iron or whatever, but I have really found magnesium to be very helpful.
Mhm.
People go to bed and their legs just won't quit,
Mhm. Mhm.
being tense and all the rest of it. So,
Mhm.
um, what do
And
we
you mentioned about tingling and stuff when we first started the conversation. You
right,
mentioned about how your nerves can not be responding properly and it can cause pain and problems in that space. Could you talk more a bit about that if you wouldn't mind?
right, yes, any nerve cell, if it's getting too much calcium, it can, what do they call it? Excitotoxic. It
Mhm.
just excites itself to death, and
Mhm.
in the process, it's causing numbness and tingling. I've
Mhm.
had so many, previous patients, now customers, who say, "Yeah, I'm facing a diagnosis of MS,"
Mhm.
have all these magnesium deficiency symptoms. What do you think? And then when they treat their magnesium deficiency, the numbness and tingling and pain and irritation all, are reversed. Now,
Mhm.
when you look at what is it? N what's it? N-methyl D aspartate,
Mhm.
MDA. That is a huge signaler for apparently chronic pain.
Mhm.
What makes that um, enzyme, I guess it must be an enzyme. Let's just call it a protein. What
Mhm.
makes it work properly and balanced is magnesium.
Is magnesium.
Yeah. So magnesium can be at the basis of treating chronic pain or acute pain, which I
Wow.
think is just, incredible. So
Amazing.
what have we done? We've talked about the brain now, where
Yeah.
with the
With the 2 million
mitochondria.
mitochondria, yeah, in one brain cell.
Yeah. And those
Amazing.
symptoms aren't even really recognized. I mean,
Yeah.
it's easy to talk about muscles and nerves, but
Yeah.
when you go into details, like I am in this latest book,
Yeah.
I listed 68 different
Wow.
conditions that are actually magnesium deficiency. Hypo Hypoglycemia, for Pete's sakes,
Mhm.
infections, inflammations, heart disease, of course, depression, dementia. So what I've done is I've put some research studies with all
Mhm.
these conditions,
Mhm.
just to formalize things. Cystitis, blood clots, anxiety, angina, I've mentioned that. So people can see themselves, cystic fibrosis,
Wow.
dysmenorrhea, painful periods,
Mhm.
female infertility. That can be where the fallopian tubes are in spasm. The smooth muscles lining the fallopian tubes are in so
Mhm.
much spasm, they don't allow the sperm and what happens with the ovaries and the sperm get together and they get
Oh, they
trapped.
probably get blocked because they're too vibrating and the sperm probably get disorientated, I imagine. I don't know where to go.
Yeah,
It probably disrupts the fluid flow, doesn't it? If they're spasming, the actual ability for them to swim, they probably wouldn't be able to swim in
yeah, yeah,
turbulent fluids. So
right,
makes
right,
it tricky. That is fascinating.
right,
So with
right.
that in mind, what would you say optimal brain health, going back to where we first started, which is the
Mhm.
2 million mitochondria in 1 neuron? What is optimal brain health for you personally?
Oh yeah, for me, Ruth, I think it's just
Hmm.
being happy and smiling. I talk about my beach walk in the morning where
Hmm.
I smile at everybody, and I call it collecting smiles. I'm
Ah, I love that.
I'm collecting smiles, and then, come to find out when I'm working on a presentation now on the brain, and I find out that smiling triggers your vagus nerve
Yeah.
and all the awesome things of your vagus nerve.
Oh,
We haven't
yeah.
talked about the vagus nerve and how important it is for the parasympathetic nervous system, for the rest and relaxation, and I, yes, actually, it's a book I'm writing on sugar and diabetes and all that. So I've done a chapter on Ozempic. And
Okay.
Ozempic, that's the shot, the weekly $1,000 shot to create artificial anorexia and bulimia. That's what I'm
That's
calling it.
terrible.
Yeah. And how it works is it bypasses the vagus nerve and jumps into the brain and shuts things down. But this GLP, glucagon, whatever, is supposed to work directly with the vagus nerve,
Mhm.
and the vagus nerve will attenuate it and make it work properly. When they bypass the vagus nerve, they shut down a lot of the vagus nerve functions. And we're finding out I found out when I put these two things together, that a lot of the side effects are just a disabled vagus nerve. It's
Wow.
really totally frightening.
And there's not much people can do about it once they start taking it either, apart from stopping it, because it has a huge impact, doesn't it, on their health and well-being. Carolyn, it's been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. How can people learn more about what you do, learn more from you, tap into the wisdom of your books and all of the programs and the supplements that you have?
Thank you. Yes, I have two major sites. One is an educational site, because I can't say anything like a testimonial on my store site. So the educational site with my radio show, my blogs, and my books and podcasts is drcarolyndean.com, CAROLYN. And the store site is rnareset.com. And we do have distributors in the UK, right downtown London, which is awesome. We have distributors all over the world, so it's pretty
amazing.
It is pretty amazing. So RNA Reset, and I created that name before all this RNA craziness. Yeah, we do have to take care of our RNA. So I thank you for this opportunity to speak my mind.
Oh, no, you're most welcome. And thank you for coming on the show. Remember, everyone, this show is all about brain health and unchaining your pain. Carolyn, what would your last words be for anybody who's struggling with the symptoms that we've described with regards to thinking, oh, is this or isn't this a magnesium deficiency?
Right. I guess what I'd say is, I'm sure all your listeners, they probably all have some magnesium in their cupboard. So take it out. If it's a capsule, powder, put it in your drinking water. It might taste a little bit sharp, but stir it up and drink it through the day. Don't take it all at once. You have to take magnesium through the day to keep a certain amount in your cells. If you overload with a dose of magnesium, it will run out the other end, and you'll waste it. So take whatever magnesium you have, and think about my magnesium when you run out, but just know that your body is starved for magnesium, so you want to start giving it what it wants.
Amazing. That is super advice. And I've never heard that, like to balance it out throughout the day and not just take one hit and then hope that's going to fix it. That's a great piece of advice. Do everyone check out all the information on Carolyn's sites, both of them, because she's got a wealth of information and she's got some amazing products out there. Dr. Carolyn Dean, it's been an absolutely brilliant conversation. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining me on the show.
And thank you for what you do. You make it possible for us to get the information out there. So heartfelt thanks.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much. And remember, this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You're not stuck with the brain or body you have. You have the power to make it better. And Dr. Carolyn Dean's kindly been here to show us how in the context of magnesium and supplements. Thank you.